Hello everyone, it's JONIMHIE here and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So for today's video, we are going to discuss about the comparatives and the superlatives. If you want to learn something, just keep on watching. Good day everyone! One of the most common things we do in our everyday language is to compare things. It might be comparing restaurants, candidates for a job position, or films to see at the cinema. So how do we make comparatives and superlatives in English? We use comparatives and superlatives to say how people or things are different. We use a comparative adjective to express how two people or things are different. And we use our superlative adjective to show how one person or thing is different to all others of its kind. For example, Mick is taller than Jack. Mick is the tallest person in the family. Now let's focus on the details of how to create each of these adjectives. Comparatives. Comparative adjectives enable us to express the difference between two people or things. In order to say that someone or something has a superior quality, size, or characteristic, you need to use more. Instead, when you want to say that someone or something has an inferior quality, size, or characteristic, you must use less. More for long adjectives. If an adjective has two or more syllables, we add the word more in front to create the comparative form. For example, this hotel is more expensive than the last hotel we stayed at. Second example, reading is more interesting than watching television. The second case is for ER for short adjectives. If an adjective has one syllable or two syllables, with Y as the second syllable, we add ER to create the comparative form. For example, your house is bigger than mine. Taking the bus is cheaper than taking the car. As you can see in the first example, if the adjective ends in a vowel or consonant, you need to double the final consonant. For example, big, bigger. Another example, fat, fatter. The third example is thin, thinner. The third rule is for irregular comparatives. As is often the case in English, there are some adjectives that are irregular and don't follow these rules. Here are the irregular comparatives. Good, better. Bad, worse. Far, farther. Fun, fun. So let's have an example sentence for our irregular comparatives. Your cooking is better than my cooking. Arriving late is worse than arriving early. Using than. When you refer to the two people or things you are comparing, you need to use than. For example, living in the city is better than living in the country. But if it's clear what you are referring to, it is also possible to make a comparison without repeating one of the things. And in this case, you don't need to use than. For example, living in the city is more expensive. So this time, let's use the word less. We use less to say that someone or something has an inferior quality, size, or characteristic. It is easy to use because you simply put less in front of any adjective. For example, walking is less tiring than running. Australia is less populated than China. We are done talking about comparative and comparative adjectives. So now let's move forward towards superlative discussion. So what is superlative? We use superlatives to compare one person or thing to several others. For example, Paris is the most beautiful city I've ever seen. This means that I've seen several cities and I consider Paris as the number one in terms of being beautiful. In a similar way to comparatives, there are two ways to use superlatives. When you want to say that one person or thing is superior to all others in that group, you need to use the most. When you want to say that one person or thing is inferior to all others in the group, you need to use the least. The most. Similarly to comparatives, we use the most in different ways according to the length of the adjectives. The most for long adjectives. If an adjective has two or more syllables, we add the most in front to create the superlative form. For example, she's the most determined candidate we've seen today. The second case for the superlative is est for short adjectives. If an adjective has one syllable or two syllables with y at the second syllable, we add est to create a superlative form. For example, it's the shortest way to the stadium. What's the longest flight you've ever taken? As with comparatives, if an adjective ends in a vowel and consonant, you need to double the final consonant. For example, sad, saddest, fit, fittest, hot, hottest. The third case for superlatives is for irregular superlatives. The same adjectives that are irregular for comparatives are also irregular for the superlative form. Good, best. Bad, worst. Here are some examples. Is this the best place to eat in town? Yesterday's performance was my worst ever. Alaska is the farthest state from Florida. That was the most fun I've had in a long time. The least. We use the least to say that someone or something has an inferior quality, size, or characteristic compared to all others of its type. Simply put the least in front of any adjective. For example, cleaning the floor is my least favorite type of housework. He's the least active person I know. He's very lazy. As or as for the case of superlative. So now let's talk about as. There is another way to compare people and things in English, which is using as plus adjective plus as. We use this form to say that things are or aren't the same. For example, I'm as tall as my brother, so that means that we are the same height. Another example will be, this book isn't as good as that one. The quality of the books is not the same. Now let's talk about using comparatives, superlatives, and as plus as. Here are some examples of each of these forms with the same adjective. So let's have the word nice. My new classmates are nicer than the last ones. Or you can say it this way. My previous classmates were less nice. Or you can say it this way. My previous classmates were less nice. Another example will be, Mr. Barry is the nicest friend I have. Or, Mr. Lewis isn't as nice as Mr. Barry. So now let's try to use the word challenging. Her new job is more challenging than her last job. Her last job was less challenging. It's the most challenging job she's ever had. So that's it for today, everyone. So always remember that learning how to use comparatives and superlatives will make a big difference to your level of conversation. Again, this is JONIMHIE, and thank you so much for watching.